He still remembered the moment clearly, even though at the time it felt completely unimportant. It happened on an ordinary evening, one of those days that blur together and leave no mark. He was sitting with a small group of friends, talking, laughing, wasting time the way people do when they think nothing special is coming next. Someone joked about how competitive she was, how she always believed she could win anything. She smiled with that confident, clever look that had earned her the nickname Foxwoman long ago. The nickname wasn't about looks or anything dramatic. It was about the way she moved through life, quick-minded, sharp-tongued, always one step ahead. She liked challenges. She liked proving people wrong. And most of all, she liked winning. That night, the bet started as a joke. It was small, almost silly. No one thought it would matter. He didn't even remember who suggested it first. Maybe it was her. Maybe it was him. All he knew was that she laughed and agreed without hesitation, fully sure the outcome would go her way. She always was. They shook on it, surrounded by teasing and laughter. Someone suggested money, but she waved it off. "That's boring," she said. She wanted something different, something memorable. After a few more jokes, the idea came up that the loser would have to stay at the winner's place for a month. It sounded ridiculous. Too long to be real. Too inconvenient to ever actually happen? He hesitated. Not because he was afraid of losing, but because the idea felt strange. Sharing his space with someone like her, someone so independent, so confident, felt uncomfortable, but everyone laughed, and she looked at him with that daring smile, as if to say he wouldn't even make it interesting. So he agreed. At the time, it still felt like nothing. A story to laugh about later. A bet that would be forgotten by morning. Then she lost. The moment it happened, the room went quiet for half a second. Just enough time for disbelief to settle in. She stared at the result, blinking like her brain hadn't caught up yet. Then she laughed. A real laugh, loud and surprised. "No way," she said. "That doesn't count." But it did count. Everyone knew it. And more importantly, she knew it too. He expected her to argue more, to twist the rules or turn it into another joke. That's what she usually did when things didn't go her way. Instead, she went quiet. Not angry, not upset, just thoughtful. The Foxwoman had lost, and it clearly wasn't something she was used to. Later that night, when most people had left, she brought it up again. Her tone was casual, but there was something serious under it. "You know I'm good for my word," she said. "A bet is a bet." He nodded, unsure what to say. He hadn't really planned for this part. The idea of her actually staying with him suddenly felt very real. They talked through it like adults. She asked about rules. He asked about expectations. Neither of them wanted things to be awkward. Neither of them wanted drama. They agreed it would be simple. She would have her own space. They would respect each other's routines. No pressure, no strange assumptions. Inside, though, he felt nervous. His place wasn't fancy. It was quiet, personal, full of habits he never had to explain to anyone. He liked his space. He liked knowing what to expect when he came home. The thought of that changing for a whole month made his chest feel tight. A few days later, she arrived with a suitcase and a backpack. She didn't make a big entrance. No jokes, no teasing comments. Just a small smile and a quick look around, as if she were studying the place. He noticed how alert she seemed, like she was already planning how to fit into the space without disrupting it too much. "This is where I'll be," she said, pointing to the spare room. "Yeah," he replied. "Make yourself comfortable." The first evening was quiet. Too quiet. They sat in the same room, but did their own things, speaking only when necessary. Every sound felt louder than usual. Every movement felt noticed. He wondered if she felt as uncomfortable as he did, but her face gave nothing away. That night, after she went to her room, he lay awake longer than usual. He kept thinking about the bet, about how something so small had turned into this situation. A month suddenly felt very long. The next few days followed a careful pattern. They were polite, almost overly polite. He gave her space. She respected his routines. They spoke about basic things: work, schedules, groceries, but avoided anything personal. It felt like walking on a floor that might crack if either of them stepped too hard. Yet slowly, without either of them noticing at first, things began to shift. He noticed how she always cleaned up after herself, even more than necessary, like she didn't want to leave a trace. He noticed how she stayed up late, often reading or working quietly, as if nighttime was when she felt most herself. She noticed how he woke up early, how he liked quiet mornings, how he never complained even when clearly tired. Small moments stood out. One morning, she left a note on the counter thanking him for the coffee he had made without thinking. Another evening, he came home late and found that she had cooked enough food for both of them, pretending it was no big deal. The nickname Foxwoman started to feel strange to him. Not wrong, but incomplete. The person he was seeing now wasn't just clever or playful. She was careful, thoughtful, maybe even a little guarded. One night, about a week in, they sat at the table longer than usual. The conversation drifted naturally, without effort. She talked about how people often misunderstood her confidence as arrogance. He admitted that he sometimes used silence to avoid conflict, even when he wanted to speak up. Neither of them planned to share that much. It just happened. After that night, the atmosphere changed. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but enough that he noticed. The tension faded, replaced by something softer. The bet no longer felt like a mistake. It felt like an unexpected pause in both their lives. Still, he reminded himself it was temporary. Just a month, she would leave. Things would return to normal. But even in those early days, somewhere deep inside, he sensed that normal might not be the same again. And without realizing it, both of them had already started counting the days, not because they wanted the month to end, but because something important had begun, quietly, the moment the bet was lost. As the second week began, the house no longer felt like it was holding its breath. The silence that once felt heavy now felt calm. They still respected each other's space, but it wasn't forced anymore. It happened naturally, like they were learning an unspoken rhythm that worked for both of them. Mornings became predictable. He woke up early, moving quietly so he wouldn't disturb her. She usually slept in, but on some days he heard her footsteps in the kitchen just as he was leaving. At first, they exchanged simple greetings. Over time, those greetings turned into short conversations about the weather, plans for the day, or something small that had happened the night before. He noticed that she liked her tea strong and her toast slightly burnt. She noticed that he never skipped breakfast, even on rushed days. These details seemed unimportant, but they slowly created a sense of familiarity. Living together stopped feeling like a challenge and started feeling like a shared routine. During the day, they went about their own lives. Work, responsibilities, outside noise, none of it changed. But coming home felt different for both of them. There was someone else there now, someone who understood the space and respected it. That alone made the house feel warmer. One evening, she came home earlier than usual. He was surprised to see her sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She looked up and smiled. Not the confident, teasing smile he had known before, but a softer one. "Long day?" he asked. She nodded. "Yeah, just one of those days." He didn't push for details. Instead, he made tea and handed her a cup without saying much. She looked at it, then at him, and said, "A quiet thank you." They sat there for a while, not talking, but not uncomfortable either. That was when he realized something had changed. Before, silence felt like something to escape. Now, it felt safe. As days passed, conversations grew longer. Sometimes they talked while cooking, standing side by side, without getting in each other's way. Other times they sat late at night, sharing thoughts that usually stayed hidden. She talked about how hard it was to always appear strong, how people expected her to be confident all the time. He talked about how he preferred listening over speaking and how that often made people think he didn't care. She laughed when he said that. "You care more than most people," she said. "You just don't announce it." That comment stayed with him longer than he expected. They also learned each other's habits. She liked music playing quietly in the background. He preferred silence when reading. Instead of arguing, they adjusted. Sometimes music filled the room. Sometimes it didn't. Neither of them made it a problem. The nickname Foxwoman slowly faded into the background. He still remembered it, but it no longer defined her. She wasn't just clever and playful. She was thoughtful, careful with her words, and surprisingly patient. And she noticed things about him that others often missed. One night, during dinner, she asked why he always washed dishes immediately after eating. He shrugged and said he didn't like mess. She smiled and said it made her feel calmer, too. After that, she started helping without being asked. Small teamwork moments like that built something stronger than either of them expected. The house developed its own quiet rules. Shoes by the door. Lights off after a certain time. Shared groceries without keeping track. None of it was discussed, yet both followed it naturally. One weekend, they stayed home almost the entire time. The weather was bad and neither felt like going out. They watched an old movie neither of them had seen before. At first, they sat on opposite sides of the couch. By the end, they were closer, not touching, but comfortable. She laughed at the wrong moments during the movie and he teased her about it. She defended herself, claiming the serious parts were boring. The teasing felt easy, not sharp. It reminded him of how she used humor to protect herself. But now it felt gentler. Later that night, she admitted she hadn't expected this arrangement to feel so normal. "I thought I'd be counting the days," she said. "Me too," he replied honestly. The words surprised both of them. As the days continued, he started noticing how her moods shifted. On some days she was energetic, joking, filling the room with her presence. On other days she was quiet, thoughtful, almost distant. He didn't question it. He simply adjusted, giving her space when she needed it, and company when she didn't ask, but clearly wanted. She noticed his patterns too. She knew when he needed silence. She knew when he was stressed, even if he said nothing. Sometimes she'd leave a note. Sometimes she'd make his favorite meal without mentioning it. These gestures were small, but they carried weight. One evening they talked about past choices. Nothing too heavy, but enough to reveal pieces of themselves. She admitted she often moved from place to place, never staying too long. He admitted he stayed in the same place for years, afraid of change. They laughed at how different they were, yet somehow it worked. By the middle of the second week, the idea of the bet felt distant. It was no longer about losing or winning. It was about sharing a space, sharing time, and discovering parts of themselves they hadn't paid attention to before. He started looking forward to her voice when he opened the door. She started asking when he'd be home. Not because she needed him, but because she wanted to know. The house felt lived in now. Not crowded, not quiet, balanced. And without saying it out loud, both of them understood something important. They weren't just passing time anymore. They were building something, slowly, carefully, one ordinary day at a time. Neither of them realized yet how much this new rhythm would matter once the month began to slip away. By the time the third part of the month began, neither of them needed to think about how to act around the other. The careful politeness was gone. The quiet rules had become habits. The house no longer felt like his place with a guest inside it. It felt shared, even though neither of them said that out loud. The change happened slowly, almost invisibly. There was no single moment that marked it. Instead, it showed in small things. He stopped wondering whether she would be home when he returned from work. She stopped feeling the need to explain where she was going. They trusted the space they had built together. One evening, he came home tired, more tired than usual. He dropped his keys on the table and sat down without saying much. She noticed immediately. She didn't ask what was wrong. She didn't try to cheer him up. She simply placed a glass of water in front of him and sat nearby, giving him quiet company. That simple act stayed with him. He realized that most people either asked too many questions or ignored his mood completely. She didn't either. She just understood. Later that night, he thanked her. She shrugged and said, "Sometimes people don't need words." Her voice was calm, but there was honesty in it. It felt like she was speaking from experience. As days passed, they began sharing more personal stories. Not all at once, not like a sudden confession, but in pieces. One night he talked about how he often felt overlooked, even by people close to him. Another night she spoke about how she learned to rely on herself early in life. She explained that the confidence people saw was something she built on purpose. "If I don't stand strong," she said, "people decide things for me." He listened carefully, realizing how much effort it took for her to be the person others saw so easily. He told her that he admired that strength. The words came out naturally, without planning. She looked at him for a moment, surprised, then smiled softly. Not the playful smile she often used, but a quieter one that felt real. Moments like that changed the way they saw each other. They started spending more time together without planning it. Cooking turned into teamwork. Shopping became something they did together instead of separately. They argued lightly about what to buy, laughed about it, and compromised without frustration. One afternoon, while cleaning up, she found an old photo of him tucked inside a book. She didn't tease him about it. She asked who it was and when. He told her about a time when life felt simpler but emptier. She listened without judgment. Later, she shared a memory of her own one about moving to a new place, knowing no one, and pretending she wasn't scared. She admitted that she often acted confident so people wouldn't see her uncertainty. He realized then that the nickname Foxwoman had never shown the full picture. It showed only the surface. Underneath, she was someone who felt deeply, thought carefully, and protected herself with intelligence rather than walls. As the days continued, something unexpected happened. He started missing her even when she was only in another room. Not in an anxious way, but in a gentle one. Her presence had become part of the background of his life, like music playing quietly. She felt it too. On days when he came home later than usual, she caught herself checking the time. She told herself it didn't matter, that it was just habit. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. One night, they stayed up far too late talking. The conversation moved easily from serious topics to silly ones and back again. They laughed until their sides hurt. Then, suddenly, the laughter faded into silence. It wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was full, heavy, in a way that felt meaningful. She broke it first. "This month," she said slowly, "isn't what I expected." He nodded. "Me neither," either of them said more, but the words hung in the air, carrying thoughts they weren't ready to voice. After that night, there was a new awareness between them. Nothing changed on the surface. There was no sudden shift in behavior. But there was an understanding that something important was happening, something neither of them could fully explain. He began to notice how naturally she fit into his life, how she understood his quiet moments, how she noticed his moods before he spoke. She noticed how he never tried to control her, never questioned her independence, never made her feel small. That mattered to her more than she admitted. One evening she came home frustrated. This time, she didn't hide it. She spoke openly about feeling misunderstood by someone at work. He listened, not interrupting, not trying to fix things. When she finished, she looked relieved, as if simply being heard had helped. "You're good at this," she said. "At what?" "Listening," she replied. "Really listening," he smiled slightly, and said he'd always thought it was a weakness. She shook her head. "It's not." That moment stayed with him. For the first time, he felt seen in a way that didn't require him to change who he was. As the third part of the month went on, the idea of the bet felt almost unreal. It no longer explained why they were there together. They weren't counting days anymore. They weren't reminding each other that this was temporary. They were simply living. One quiet morning, as sunlight filled the kitchen, she leaned against the counter and watched him make coffee. "You know," she said, "I don't feel like a guest anymore." He paused, then nodded. "You're not." The words were simple, but they carried weight. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she smiled, and for a moment, the confident mask she often wore slipped away completely. In that moment, both of them felt it, the connection that had grown without permission, without planning. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was steady, deep, and real. They didn't talk about what would happen next. They didn't ask where this was going. They just let it exist, knowing that whatever this was, it mattered. And for the first time since the bet began, the thought of the month ending didn't feel distant anymore. It felt close. Too close. Yet neither of them was ready to face that truth just yet. They chose instead to hold on to the days they had, letting the unexpected connection grow stronger with every shared moment. Unaware of how difficult letting go might soon become, as the fourth part of the month began, time seemed to move differently. Days passed quickly, yet each one carried a quiet weight. Neither of them needed to check the calendar to know how much time was left. They felt it in small ways, in pauses that lasted a little too long, and glances that held more meaning than before. The house was the same, but the feeling inside it had changed. There was warmth, comfort, and something else, something unspoken. They both sensed it, but avoided naming it, as if saying it out loud might make the end arrive sooner. He found himself noticing details he hadn't paid attention to before. The way she hummed softly while cooking, the way she stood by the window in the evenings watching the sky change colors. These moments felt important now, like pieces of time he wanted to remember. She noticed changes in him too. He smiled more easily. He spoke more, sharing thoughts he once kept to himself. And yet, sometimes she caught him staring off into space, thoughtful and quiet, as if something was weighing on him. One afternoon she brought up the subject neither of them had mentioned yet. They were sitting at the table, not doing anything in particular. "We're getting close to the end," she said, her voice calm but careful. He nodded slowly. Yeah, that was all either of them said. The conversation moved on, but the words stayed with them long after. After that, there was a subtle shift. They became more aware of time. They made the most of evenings, even if it was just sitting together. They lingered in conversations, stretching them a little longer than necessary. One night the power went out during a storm. The house fell into darkness, lit only by faint light from outside. She laughed nervously, and he found a flashlight. They sat in the living room, listening to the rain and the wind. In that quiet space, she spoke more openly than before. She talked about how she rarely stayed in one place long enough to feel settled, how she often left before things became complicated. He listened, understanding more than she realized. He admitted that he stayed because leaving felt risky. "I get comfortable," he said, "and then I don't want to lose what I built." She looked at him with a thoughtful expression. "Comfort isn't a bad thing," she said, "but sometimes it can keep us from growing." They sat with that thought for a long time. As days passed, moments became more meaningful. A shared meal felt like an event. A quiet walk felt like something special. They laughed, but there was a gentle sadness under it, like laughter trying to hold something in place. She started packing some of her things, not all at once, but gradually. He noticed, though she didn't mention it. Each item placed back into her suitcase felt like a reminder of what was coming. One evening, he found one of her notes tucked between the pages of a book he was reading. It wasn't planned. It simply said, "Thank you for making this month easy." The words were simple, but they hit him harder than he expected. He didn't mention the note right away. Instead, he left one for her the next morning, thanking her for bringing warmth into the house. Neither of them talked about the notes, but they both knew what they meant. As the final week approached, there were moments when the air felt heavy. They caught themselves wanting to say something, then stopping. They didn't want to risk changing what they had, even though it was already changing. One night, they stayed up late again. This time, the conversation was quieter, more thoughtful. She admitted she was nervous about leaving, not because she had nowhere to go, but because she didn't want to return to how things were before. He felt the same, though saying it scared him. "I didn't expect this," he said. "Any of it." "Neither did I," she replied. There was a long pause. He thought about asking her what would happen after the month ended. She thought about asking the same, but neither of them did. They both knew the question was there, waiting. The next few days were filled with small acts of care. He cooked her favorite meals. She made time to sit with him, even when she was tired. They didn't rush through anything. They moved slowly, as if trying to stretch time. One afternoon, she stood by the door, keys in hand, and hesitated. "I'll be back late," she said. "Okay," he replied. She stopped, then turned back. "You'll still be here, right?" He smiled gently. "I'm not going anywhere." The reassurance seemed to ease something in her. She nodded and left, but the question lingered in his mind long after the door closed. As the days continued, Both of them became more aware of what they stood to lose. The bet had brought them together, but it couldn't decide what came next. That part was up to them. They shared one last quiet weekend before the final days arrived. No plans, no distractions. Just time. They cooked together, cleaned together, sat together. It felt ordinary and important at the same time. Late one evening, she sat beside him and said softly, "I don't want this to end like nothing happened." He looked at her, understanding exactly what she meant. "It didn't mean nothing," he said. "It meant more than I expected." She nodded, her eyes thoughtful. "Me too." They sat there, close, but not touching, both feeling the weight of the moment. The end was no longer just a thought. It was near. And for the first time since the bet began, neither of them was sure they wanted things to return to the way they were before. The final days arrived quietly. There was no dramatic countdown, no clear moment that announced the end. It simply showed itself in small reminders, the suitcase standing near the wall again, the way she checked her phone more often, the pauses in their conversations that felt heavier than before. The house felt fuller and emptier at the same time. Every room held memories now. The kitchen, where they had shared quiet mornings, the couch where they had laughed late into the night. Even the hallway felt different, as if it remembered her footsteps. They both tried to act normal. They talked about everyday things. They joked. They shared meals. But underneath it all, there was a shared understanding that something important was coming to an end. On the second or two last day, she woke up earlier than usual. He noticed her sitting by the window, watching the morning light. She looked calm but thoughtful. He made coffee and handed her a cup without saying anything. She smiled and thanked him, her fingers wrapping around the mug as if she wanted to hold on to the warmth. "Tomorrow," she said quietly, nodded. Yeah, that was all that needed to be said. Later that day, they went for a walk. It wasn't planned. One moment they were sitting inside, the next they were outside, moving side by side. They didn't talk much. Words felt unnecessary. The world around them continued as usual, unaware of how meaningful this simple walk felt to them. She stopped at one point and looked around. "I didn't think a month could change so much," she said. He thought for a moment. "I didn't either. I thought it would just be time passing." "But it wasn't," she replied. "No," he agreed. "It wasn't." He continued walking, each step feeling like it mattered. That night, they stayed up later than usual. Neither of them wanted to be the first to say they were tired. They talked about memories from the month, laughing softly, pointing out moments that seemed small at the time, but now felt important. "You remember the first week?" she asked. "How awkward it was." He smiled. "I thought we'd never get past that." "Me too," she said. "I almost packed my bag and left." "I'm glad you didn't," he said before he could stop himself. She looked at him, surprised by his honesty. "Me too," she replied. The words hung between them, full of meaning. As the night grew quiet, the conversation slowed. Eventually, there was silence again. But this silence was different from the one at the beginning of the month. It wasn't uncertain or uncomfortable. It was full, emotional, and heavy with everything they hadn't said yet. She took a deep breath. "I don't want to pretend this was just a bet," she said softly. "I don't want to walk away like it didn't matter." He felt his chest tighten. "It mattered to me," he said. "More than I expected." She nodded, her eyes focused on the floor. "I'm not good at staying," she admitted. "I usually leave when things start to mean something." He listened carefully. "And I'm not good at asking people to stay," he said. "I usually assume they'll go." They looked at each other then, really looked, seeing the truth in each other's words. The next morning came too quickly. Sunlight filled the room, gentle and unaware. She packed the last of her things quietly. He moved around the house, unsure of where to stand or what to do. Every sound felt loud. Every moment felt important. When her suitcase was finally ready, she stood still for a moment, as if waiting for something. He felt the weight of that pause. "So," she said, trying to sound light, "this is it." He nodded, his voice steady, even though he didn't feel it. "I guess it is." They stood there, neither moving. The month had ended on paper, but emotionally, neither of them was ready to let go. I don't regret this, she said. Not even a little. Neither do I, he replied. She smiled, but her eyes were serious. I don't know what happens next, she said honestly. He took a slow breath. We don't have to decide everything right now. She looked at him, searching his face. What do you want? The question was simple, but it carried everything. I want this to matter, he said. I don't want to lose what we found just because the bet is over. She exhaled slowly, as if she had been holding her breath. I was hoping you'd say that. They talked then, openly and honestly. No promises they couldn't keep. No pressure. Just truth. They agreed not to force anything, but also not to pretend the month had been nothing. When she finally walked to the door, she hesitated. I don't want goodbye to sound final, she said. It doesn't have to, he replied. This doesn't end here unless we let it. She smiled, a real smile, warm and relieved. Then don't disappear, she said. I won't, he promised. She stepped outside, then turned back one last time. Thank you, she said. For the space, for the time, for being you. Thank you, he replied. For staying. The door closed gently behind her. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't empty. It held echoes of laughter, shared moments, and something new he hadn't expected to find. He stood there for a long time, thinking about how a simple bet had changed everything. Later that evening, his phone buzzed. A message from her. I already miss the house, it read. But mostly I miss you. He smiled and typed back, then maybe this isn't the end. Maybe it's just the end of the bet. As days passed, they kept talking. Meeting, laughing, learning how to move forward without the excuse of a lost bet. What they had found didn't disappear with the month that followed them into whatever came next. Neither of them knew exactly where the road would lead. But for the first time, they didn't feel the need to rush away or hold back. The bet had ended. But what began because of it was something neither of them wanted to lose.